How's it going, guys? Max here. Today I would like to show you how you can leverage HYROS API using make.com to automate workflows. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to navigate their API documentation. You'll set up your first API call, and at the end we'll briefly talk about webhooks. If you're a complete beginner, this is exactly for you. While we're not gonna build some complex automation, I'm just gonna show you exactly what is possible with HYROS, and if you implement it to your specific use case, you're gonna save a lot of money as well as a lot of time. So let's get straight into it. So what do we need? If you click on this video, I assume you already use HYROS, so we need an active HYROS account and make.com to make this work, right? Automation. So what I want you to do is navigate to settings. This is a demo account just for demonstration. Go into profile tab and scroll down. As you can see right here, if you click on view API key, it's going to give you long strings of text. Essentially, it's a token to authorize ourselves. So make sure to save it somewhere. This is private information as well, right? You don't want anyone to be using your API key. So save it somewhere and we'll use it later on. Right now, we're in their API documentation. So I would just like to show you what are the possibilities, what are the actions, how does it work, how to navigate it, etc. So for those who have no idea what API is, in simple terms, it's a way that apps can communicate to each other. So if you use something like HubSpot, ClickFunnels, ClickUp, Slack, each and every single tool like this has their own documentation, which provides you with API endpoints, aka actions you can do through an automation, right? So you don't have to go into a dashboard and do it all manually. You can do it through an automation. So in terms of HYROS, on the left-hand side, as we can see, we have reference. I would classify that as categories of the actions we could do. So let's go through some of them. So we can retrieve leads, we can create a lead, we can retrieve a lead's journey. We can also create calls, update calls, delete calls. This one is very valuable. Ad attribution and ad account attribution. It essentially gives you an ads report, which when our clients are using HYROS, it provides us already with so much accurate data that we can create any insights, any actionable insights they need to move forward. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do with this. It's obviously up to you to go through it and see what applies to you. Now I would like to break down the API request, right? Don't be intimidated if you're not a developer or a technical person. I would say it's pretty straightforward. You just have to really sit down and try to understand it. So each and every single API request, each and every single action has multiple things in it. So we have a URL. So it's essentially a URL we call for a certain action. Then we have a method, which is this. We have get, post, patch, put, delete, a bunch of other methods depending on the action, right? So get is usually for retrieving data, right? So in this case, we have retrieve lead. So you would use get. If I click on create lead, it's going to be post. If we want to update a call or update the sale, it's going to be put. If you want to delete, etc. Every single time you're in API documentation, please look at what the method is so it works. Following, we have headers. So essentially, header most of the time is just an authorization, right? So this is where we're going to use our API key to authorize our account. In most cases, just select curl and it's going to give you the entire API request and how it's supposed to look like. And lastly, we have query parameters, which in this case, it's attributes. Essentially, depending on the action, you can retrieve a specific information you want, right? So in this case, when we're retrieving leads, we can actually get leads by their IDs, email, or the join date. So we can give a range. Okay, this month we've acquired this amount of leads. Now, if the API request is successful, in the documentation, most of the time, it's going to give you exactly what the response is. This is always a JSON. Do not be intimidated by this. If you don't understand in make.com, it's going to show you much more clearly what is going on. So let's go into make and set up our first API call. So there are actually two ways, through an HTTP request or through a specific module that is in make, meaning that each and every single tool that you use, right? We have BigQuery, Google Sheets, Bubble has its own module in make. If you use Zapier, the probability of having your app there is much higher because there's much more apps. But if there's no option, if there's no app specifically made for your tool, you can do an HTTP request, which we're going to do right now. So select HTTP, scroll down and make request. So on the left-hand side, we have our API documentation. On the right-hand side, we have the HTTP request, so we can know exactly what to put in there. So click on this, and as I was talking about, breaking down what needs to be provided in terms of making sure the request is actually successful, right? So we have the URL, right? So in this case, we're going to retrieve leads. So we take the HTTP api.hyros.com and leads, right? So if you click copy, and you paste it in here. Then we have the method. So as I was talking about, this is in terms of this specific API endpoint, it's get, right? So as we can see, we have get, head, post, put, patch, etc. So get. Now headers, right? The most important part, the authorization. So when we scroll down right here, we can see header, it's API key. So API key. And then you paste your API key we got at the beginning. And then lastly, we have query string, which again, just depends on what you want to do. I would always refer to this entire URL because this is the request, right? So if we want to retrieve leads specifically by their email, this is what we're going to do. So if we look at email, so the query parameter or the attribute parameter is going to be emails, and exactly how it is right here. So apostrophe, if that's how you call it, apostrophe max@maydocs.digital apostrophe. So this is one email, or I can do 2 emails, 3, etc. to.com. Now, just a reminder, usually there's a limit to how much information you can retrieve. So if you were to toggle this drop down, you can see we can only retrieve maximum of 50 leads per request. I mean, it's pretty simple. Now we have set up our request, and if I run it once, it is going to be successful in data. And if I was to open each and every single one of them, as we can see, we got 50, which is the limit. And if I was to open 6, we can see information. Obviously, I'm going to blur it, but we can see all the information about the specific lead. Now, there's a second option, which I'm going to show you right now. This is personally my favorite because it's much easier to set up and then use later on. So most recently, HYROS has been added to make.com, so you can actually create and authenticate just once, and you don't have to do, the API key, etc. Right? So let's just, if you click add and you type in HYROS, just select any function, any action, and it is going to show like this, where you have to connect. So when you click add, just name your connection and put your API key there. So now you're going to be authenticated, and every single time you want to do an API request, you don't have to, do it all over again every single time. Now, as you can see, HYROS provides us with a limited number of actions. However, since you're authenticated, you can call whatever API endpoint you want. So as we can see, for now, we can create a lead, create an order, click, call. We can even refund an order. And then we have webhooks, which we're going to talk about briefly. And then we have an API call. So in this case, for example, we are trying to call and retrieve leads. So you would go to a documentation and essentially just provide the path of the specific request. So we don't need this URL. We just need the /v1 up until the question mark. So if I copy this and paste it in here, this is exactly what you need, right? And then you can configure your query parameters, etc., etc. Now, just briefly, I want to show you a few examples of practical use cases. Again, each and every single business is different, use different tools, a different process, and it really depends on what you would like to do with your automation. But for example, we can set up automated daily sales reports, right? So every single day, there's an automation that pulls data from HYROS, formatted in a readable way, and it sends a notification via Slack or email. Then we can track leads, right? So maybe based on some of your criteria, there's a high value lead, right? So if someone has multiple touch points across multiple platforms, you can run this daily, or when someone books a call, and then run an automation. If a certain condition equals what you would classify as a high value lead, you can then update the lead in the CRM, mark it as VIP, and then send a notification, make sure to close them or something along those lines, right? We have you can integrate with CRM, ad performance dashboard. Obviously, with our clients, when they use HYROS, we take all the information, we display it in a way that makes sense for them, and so they can make proper decisions, right? Then we have the customer journey mapping. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do. Just use your imagination, but mainly sit down and really think what will be valuable specifically for your business. And lastly, we have webhooks. So what are webhooks? Essentially a trigger, right? When a certain action happens, a webhook is triggered. So for example, a new call is booked, it triggers the webhook. If a new lead opts in, it triggers a webhook. And based off of the specific action, you can do specific things within your automation. So for example, when someone opts in, you would create a new contact in your CRM. How you would set this up, like I said, I would use the module of HYROS specifically. So as we can see, we can watch attributed call, opted in lead, assign lead origin, and watch sale, right? So if you click on this and you create a new webhook, you just name it however you want. And based on your specific scenario, you would set up the entire automation. If you want to set it up specifically within HYROS, it's very straightforward. If you go to integrations and you scroll down, and since I'm in a demo account, you don't see it clearly, but if you were to click on this icon, it's going to give you actions you want to trigger the webhook for. So you would select, let's say a book gets called, and if I was to create a custom webhook, which is webhook, custom webhook, and I would do HYROS, I save it, I copy this address, this hook, and then I'm going to paste it in HYROS. So essentially every single time where someone books a call, for example, it's going to trigger this specific module, right? It's the same thing as this, but this one is much easier to manage or set up. Now, this video was a very quick one. This was just to show you what is possible with HYROS and how to set up your first API call. In the near future, I'm going to be showing you how to actually implement it in real life use cases so you can scale with data even more. Now, if you run a high ticket offers such as agency service, coaching programming, doing over $100,000 per month, and with scale with data, you want to become a data-driven company, make sure to book a call down below. And then you can also check out our case studies, how we align sales and marketing for Business Coach Academy, or how we got a client ascension to 62.5% close rate just by identifying which lead source performs the best. Other than that, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.